come make my New Year's Eve dress with me. It is December 30th, and I told myself I was going to recreate this Mugler dress that I have always loved. So I decided to go ahead and buy all this stuff. I did buy all this stuff a long time ago, but unfortunately I'm waiting until the very last minute to actually start making this dress. It is December 30th, it is 5 o'clock, and I have procrastinated until the very last minute because I also have to gem tack these, which means I have to leave enough time for it to dry. We're gonna try to make this in a day. I'm gonna show you guys step by step how I do it. I also did a video showing you guys where I got all of my stuff, but I have all of my products. I have my mannequin. We're gonna drape the pattern on the mannequin and get started sewing, and hopefully it turns out. We'll see. Wish me luck. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tape out the design. And what's really great about this dress is because it's symmetrical, I only have to tape out one side. I'm just using some pattern making tape. You can get this on Amazon. I also have a bunch of muslin I'm going to use, and then I have a bunch of pins in my mannequin. People always ask me, where did I get my mannequin? Where do you get mannequins? If you know and you've looked for them, you know that they're very expensive. But a good mannequin will last you a very long time, which is why you can normally find them secondhand. You can find vintage mannequins that were from decades ago and they're still good to use. So if you're looking for a mannequin, I always suggest looking online first, because you might be able to find a really good deal on someone that's getting rid of them or a company that's getting rid of them. So I looked at this dress from several different angles and was trying to figure out, is there boning? Is it just one piece? Is it two piece? I'm pretty sure it's two pieces. I think it is a center slit, but I don't think there is any overlap. And I think there is boning right down here. There's probably also boning in the back, and that probably also helps hold up all of that beading. So that's what I'm gonna go with. It's really strange. There are some photos where you see beading also on the sides, but when I look at the live photos, there's also a video that I can link. There's just no beading on the side. So I don't know why it seems like there's two separate versions of this, but the original version and the runway version do not have that beading on the side. So we're gonna skip the beading on the side. I'm gonna do a two-piece dress, center slit that does not overlap, just a center slit. And then I'm gonna do some boning in these princess seams. So let's get started taping. I want to make a note, when I say a two-piece dress, I don't mean separate, I just mean that in terms of pattern. So there is a top and a skirt that will be sewn together versus them being patterned together and being one big piece. So I hope that makes sense. So see how I've kind of got my overall shape here for the top. I'm going to cut this off at the waist. And then I'm going to create a separate piece for where my princess seam is. My princess seam is, that's the seam that runs right here. Right there is your princess seam. And so that's where I'm going to put some boning into this to give it some structure. I'll also probably put some boning on this side seam. And I'm marking with my tape all of my seams. So these will be all of my individual pattern pieces that I'm going to go through with my muslin, and we're going to cut out, and I'll show you guys when I put my muslin on this how we're going to do that. And those will be our actual pattern pieces to create this dress. And then this is our center back. And then obviously you can see same thing for the center back. I'm only doing one side because we're essentially doing the same thing just on the other side. So I'm going to make sure I really just kind of like where all of my seams are. I think I want it a little lower. Let's see, because she's pretty low cut. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use my muslin, which I have a bunch of right here on this table. And I'm going to cut basically little pieces. I have some scraps down here I'm going to use to start off with. And I'm going to place these on each individual pattern piece that I've placed. And I'm going to do this really flat. And there is a special trick to doing it this way. So if your piece isn't going flat, it's probably because you're on a curve. Like you can see, I'm at the bust point. So once I've got this mostly pinned, I'm going to cut little slits on the ends before I cut the actual fabric. So I want to make sure this sits really nice and flat, and you can kind of see like we've got a lot of bubbles. We're going to cut this, and we're going to cut slits all along that side where there's a curve. And this is going to help us get everything really flat and just placed better. And now this is why I'm using, you always want to use a color pattern tape. And normally they come in colors, but you want to be able to see it through your muslin. Even if you're not using a white muslin, if you're just using like a scrap fabric, make sure it's not a dark scrap fabric because you want to be able to see through it. Because we're just going to mark our lines. I might get another pen because this one's coming out. And this is going to be our pattern piece. Let me switch pens. Make sure you write what piece this is because it's very easy once this is all off the mannequin. So this is my center front piece. And I will probably cut this on a fold so that way these two are identical instead of adding seam allowance on this one, which we'll go over when we cut our fabric. But this is my center front piece. I'm going to repeat this exact same process for all of these pieces. So I have my side piece, and this is the one that my strap is connected to. I'm not gonna go all the way around the back. I'm actually just gonna measure the distance from my top of my shoulder to the back. And then when I actually cut the fabric, my fashion fabric, I'm gonna leave like 3 inches. I do that on purpose because straps are one of those things I wanna leave till the very, very end. I don't like to mess with patterning them. I think it's worth it to just cut them extra long, finish the dress, put it on, see exactly where you want it, and then sew it on to that back piece. So right now, I'm not gonna worry about patterning this on. I'm just gonna make sure I write how much I need for the back on from my top shoulder. So from here, where I'm ending, I need about 8.5 inches. But because I wanna be careful and I wanna cut more than enough so I can try it on and then we don't have to worry about our straps for being too short. Oh, forget I dropped that. So I'm gonna mark, let's say 12 inches. So we have a decent amount left over. So I'm gonna write on here, plus 12. And then I'm gonna mark my pattern piece. And when I'm done marking, I'm gonna make sure that I label this the side front.
Now I've spread these next two up because I'm repeating the exact same steps like what we did in the first part and what we did for the side front. So I'm gonna mark my pattern, make sure it's extra flat. That is my side back. And then I'm gonna repeat the exact same thing for my center back, which is what you see me doing here.
I've done all of my pattern pieces for the front. We are going to drape this skirt. And yeah, we're gonna drape the skirt. We're gonna do a center slit. This shouldn't be too hard. I don't think this is fully floor length. I feel like this is more like ankle length, and it should be a pretty easily draped skirt. We'll see. I'm already debating on, do I want to line this? We'll see. I might not have time. So is this the most professional draping you guys have ever seen? No, but is it great for time constraints? Yeah, I think so. So we're just gonna start draping. We're gonna figure out, I am gonna do the front in one piece, one big piece, and then cut that front slit. And then for the back, we'll do that in 2 pieces, but I'll only drape one piece because again, they're going to be completely the same. So this is my center seam right here. Also, this is my waistline. Let's mark that throughout the whole thing so we know for the actual pattern where the waistline is. Same with, I'll go ahead and mark these side seams and where they stop. All the way down, that one's pretty straight. This one I've got more extra on. Here's my center seam, all the way down here. And now I kind of want where the slit starts to be around here. Here is the no-no area. I want it to be around here. So I'm just gonna make a little notch and we're gonna cut down.
So you guys can see while I'm draping this is not perfect by any means. So normally what I would do is take this over to pattern paper and perfect all of my seams and make sure everything is straight. Because I don't have time to do that, we're just gonna take this over to our fashion fabric and cut. And when I get there and I can see this off the body, I can perfect a lot of those lines and make them straight. I'm also gonna cut this in half, which is why I marked my center seam. So that way we have 2 symmetrical sides, and we'll go over that for cutting.
I'm just gonna do the back. Starting here, we're only going to do one side, similar to how we did the other. This one, I want it to be a little tighter in the back, so I am going to add a dart, and I'll show you how I do that in just one second when I get to that dart. But I'm using the straight edge of the fabric, you can see the end of it, to go in my center back. And then this will be my curved piece. And you can see when I do that, we have all this excess that comes in right here. So make sure this stays here. I'm gonna pin right here on my waist seam. And now you can see we have all of this extra right here. So this is going to be my dart. If you can't see that, here is my extra. Here is my skirt piece. What we're going to do is we are going to fold this in, and I like to do it along where this back seam is so that those line up really nicely. And we're just going to pin a dart all the way down until the fabric flattens out again. Which is normally right at the hip. So now I'm gonna mark, my waist actually starts right here. And I'm gonna mark my dart all the way down till it ends. And I'm gonna mark my side seam, so that's right on where the side seam is, and that goes straight down. I have all of my pieces off the mannequin. These are my 4 top pieces. And I'll kind of straighten some of these out because, like I said, I'm not going to bring these to pattern paper and do this super professional because I don't have the time. But normally that's what I would do. But in the meantime, we're just going to cut these out along the lines, and then these will be our actual pattern pieces that I will pin to the fabric. And I think, because I don't have a ton of time, I think what I'm going to do is line the skirt, but I won't line the top. I am going to be adding boning, but I'm just going to be creating boning channels out of my seam allowance. And I think I should be good. And then you won't see a lot of those. I'll just have to fold in and basically turn in the raw edges for the top and for the straps. But because they're going to be so bedazzled, you won't see them. Otherwise, I would just do a lining so that way you're not seeing all that sewing on the top and it can look like a seamless dress. But since you're not going to see it anyways, I don't think it's a big deal. So I'm starting with my center front piece, which we are cutting on the fold, which means it's going to be right here. And I'm going to pin that right there. Here's my center back. Make sure we have enough room. You need at least an inch because we're adding half an inch here and half an inch here. So make sure your pieces aren't too close in any places.
So now you see I'm just cutting, and I am guessing half an inch seam allowance. I know there are different tricks to do this, like you can put magnets on your scissors. Right now, I'm just kind of guesstimating. Normally what I would do is you would take these individual pattern pieces, take them to pattern paper, and then you can easily measure out half an inch or however much seam allowance you want. But since we're in a hurry, we are just kind of guessing our seam allowance, and thankfully this has a little bit of stretch, so I think we will be okay. Now I'm moving on to my skirt pieces. You can see my center front has been cut on the fold. So that was 2 pieces essentially, but that is my front piece I'm cutting right now. And again, you can see my slit is not very straight. We're going to perfect that when I cut the fashion fabric so that it looks like a straight slit. But you want to cut this on the fold so you make sure that it's symmetrical. And then I'm just going to cut out my back piece. And once I have this cut out with all the seam allowance, I'm going to mark the darts, and I'm also going to cut out my lining because I am lining the skirt. So I'll cut these out, mark my darts for both the fashion fabric and my lining fabric. And you can see that's what I'm doing here.
Okay, so now I have all of my pieces cut out. Here's my top pieces. I'm gonna start sewing these together with half an inch seam allowance. This does have some stretch, so I'm not too worried about the fact that I didn't probably cut my seam allowance very correct. But all of my pieces look pretty good as far as matching up. And then I'm not doing a lining for this. I'm gonna sew down my channel so that I can insert in my boning. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to hem basically this, and I'll hem this on both sides. I'm not too worried about having that outside stitching because it's going to be literally covered in a million different beads. And also I kind of wanna do it that way because I'm not sure I did my pattern low cut enough. It is super low cut in the actual dress. And so if I wanna fix this, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hem this side of my strap, and I'm gonna leave this side of my strap. I'm gonna try it on once I have the whole dress together and decide if I want to take this down lower and by how much. So I'm gonna leave that till the end, but for now, I'm just gonna sew up all of my pieces. If you watch some of my actual professional tutorials before, not the ones where I'm doing things last minute, you'll notice I always like to go side by side So I'll start with this side and then I'll start with this side. And the reason I do that, I actually learned from a different YouTube tutorial, because it's really easy to get off even by like just a little bit, like a couple centimeters. And then by the time you get to this side, your top is like this because you've gotten off, because we're not perfect. We're humans, we're not machines. So I'm gonna start with this side, sew those down, and then I'm gonna start here and then sew it down to the center. And I'll show you kind of what I mean. So now this is what I mean by I've sewn up side by side. So here I've done one side. I'm gonna clip off some of my threads, and then I will connect in the middle. And this just helps prevent getting off from your pattern pieces. So I always sew all of my pieces like this, one side, and then I'll go to the next side. So now I'm gonna connect these. Once I connect these, I'm gonna flip this over. I'm gonna sew down all of that seam allowance for the channel for the entire thing. And then I'm gonna go ahead, I think I'm going to basically hem, flip over and hem this side.
So here I am sewing down that seam allowance, and I'm doing this away from my center front, and then these are going to be the channels where I enter in my boning. So I'm doing that for each of my seams for all of my individual pattern pieces that we've sewn together. And then once I've done all of my channels, I'm just going to go ahead and hem that top edge. Normally I wouldn't hem the top edge. I would take a lining, and then those would be seamless because you'd take the seam allowance and it would essentially be in between the main fabric and the lining. But my fabric doesn't fray, which is a good thing. And also you're not going to be able to see that there is a seam or that there's any sewing on that top edge because it's going to be completely covered with beading. So we're kind of cheating here, but for the sake of time, it definitely works.
I have done all of my channels. I'm going to flip this way. I have sewn the outside and hemmed those. I know it's hard to tell because it's black, and I've left this blank because I don't think I scooped it down low enough. So I might end up cutting those and scooping it down even more, especially at that center part. I'm going to try it on first before I do that. And when I do that, I might end up having to make this boning shorter and take these out after I attach the skirt. We'll see. We'll get there if we have to do that. But in the meantime, we're going to put our boning channels inside the channels that we've sewn down. So to do that, I'm going to grab my boning. I'm going to measure how much I need, and I'm going to start, I like to do 0.75 inches from the top and the bottom. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut 2 of the same size boning pieces. And you can either tape or burn off your edges. This is going to help prevent it from poking through when you're wearing it, which is always very annoying. If you've ever had a corset or any top that has boning and it starts poking through, that is the absolute worst. So we don't want that. So we're going to tape off our edges, or again, you can get a lighter and you can burn them off. And I'm going to do this for all of my channels because I do have heavy beadwork. And even though this does have a strap, this will help take a little bit off those straps and make sure everything is staying up. So now I'm just going to insert my boning into the first channel. Okay, so we've got all our boning. Remove all these threads that we've got going on. And that's it for my top until I try it on, because I might swoop that more, but you can see I've got my boning. I push that one up a little bit more. And then eventually this will get sewn down. But I'm gonna work on my skirt so that we can attach this to the top. And then once we've got our top, I'm just gonna do my zipper, and then we've pretty much got the base of the dress done, and we just have to do a million of these beads. Not a million of these, because this is the big one, but we'll have to do a bunch of beading. So now moving on to my skirt. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew up these darts. I'm gonna do this for my main fabric and my lining. And so we're gonna sew those up. Once we sew those up, we're just going to sew it onto our main skirt piece, which I have right here. Cut, it is perfectly symmetrical. And then once we do that, we're just gonna attach our lining, which I'll show you guys, and attach it to the top. So we're kind of in the home stretch-ish. I think I can finish this by New Year's Eve. We're cutting it so close. It is, I think, 11 o'clock on the 31st. I don't know what time it is, but we're not that far off. I just have to get all of my beading done and have my beading at least dry for like 4 hours before I get ready, which I think I can do. So now I'm gonna pin, this is my front piece, I'm gonna pin those back pieces that I just sewed down the dart. I am gonna pin this. I haven't really been pinning for the sake of time, but because I'm using a stretchy fabric, I don't wanna get off, because it's really easy if you're using a stretch for things to start getting off. So I'm gonna put these right sides facing. I'm gonna pin both of my sides, and then we're gonna sew this into place. And I'm gonna repeat the exact same thing for my lining, and then attach the top, and then we're gonna zip. I feel like I'm cutting it really close, because again, I need at least 4 hours for that beading to dry. Really, you wanna do it like overnight or even 24 hours to get like good dry beads. Clearly, I don't have that time. So I think if I give it at least 4 hours, I should be okay. Maybe not great, but I should be like, okay, maybe I'll lose a couple beads, but I won't lose like all the beads. So now I have my skirt. This is the top edge of my main fabric skirt, not my lining. I'm gonna grab my top. I'm gonna place it right sides facing down. I'm gonna try to align this as best I can. Again, I didn't like measure. So we might not perfectly align the top edge of our skirt with the top edge of our top, but we're gonna try. But I'm gonna pin this, and then I'm gonna grab my lining, and we're gonna sandwich the top into the skirt. I'm gonna grab my lining, and I'm gonna sandwich this in between with the right sides facing. So my skirt pieces are right sides facing, and we're gonna do the same thing for our lining. We're just gonna pin, try and align all those seams. My lining was cut from the same pattern, so all of these seams should line up. And then I'm gonna do this with a zigzag, because this might pull a bit, because it does have some stretch. And I did want this to be a tight dress. I mean, I want it to be really fitted. Okay, so now I'm gonna zigzag stitch these, and then I'm gonna do my slit right afterwards. Okay, so I've already pinned this, but this is my top. It is still right sides facing. Let's not have this fall down on the view here. So I've just sewn my top. It is right sides facing. My top is in between my two skirt pieces. This is my top edge of my skirt. I've aligned and clipped my lining and my main fabric. Again, this is still right sides facing. So when we flip this out, the slit, the front slit will be seamless, and that's what we want. All of these seams, again, will be hidden because they will be on the inside, and then our top actually isn't too bad, even though I did line it, because all of our seam allowance is sewn down into those channels. This is such a little minor thing for the slit, but because I worked in fashion and I had one boss who was like super nitpicky, and now I always notice it, but when I go to sew down this slit, a lot of times people will sew down one side, leave this in and flip it, keep your needle down, flip it, and then sew down one side. And then what happens when you do that is normally one side of the fabric that's getting sewn down will grow a little bit more than this. And again, I feel like I would never notice this if a boss didn't point it out who's very nitpicky, but the better way to do that is actually to take a little bit more time. Start here, sew down, and then take everything out, reposition your fabric, and then start here again and sew down. So that's what we're gonna do. So now we're gonna add our zipper, but before I add the zipper, because the lining and the skirt are here, and also this is flipped right sides out so you guys can see. So here's my slit, which is looking great. Here's my top. I still think we'll scoop that out a little bit more, but we're gonna work on that back. We're gonna get the zipper. I'm moving really fast now because I'm stressing, and I'm not gonna worry about hemming until the very, very end because I wanna leave more than enough time for all those beads to dry. But I'm gonna base stitch my skirt pieces down because that's gonna make it a lot easier for my zipper. Because I'm using an invisible zipper, I'm gonna plug in my iron. I'm gonna iron out those teeth because it's gonna help make that zipper look really, really good once it's on. But for now, I'm just gonna base stitch these together. It makes life a lot easier when you're sewing these down. Iron the teeth away from the zipper, and this honestly, I think makes it look so much easier, and makes it look so much better. You can hear the panic in my voice as I'm like coming down on deadlines because I know I need to start getting ready immediately after I do these beads. So, you know, you just panicking, just a casual panic because I waited till the last minute. Okay, my zipper is ready. Here's my top. We're gonna wait till the end, try these on, and then I'll add my straps, but for now, forget about that. Taking my zipper. Again, I have no lining, so I don't have to worry about sandwiching a lining, so I'm just going to take this, flip it so that the teeth are facing away from the center back, and we're gonna start pinning. We'll make sure our zippers start right at the same point, and we're gonna pin the other side. So now my zipper is on. Always zip up your zipper between every step when you're putting this on to make sure it's looking right. Thankfully, my zipper looks great. Everything is aligning how I want it. And now I always leave a little bit of a tail, but I'm gonna flip this inside out and we're just gonna close up this back seam. And then once I close up that back seam, I'm gonna try this on. I'm gonna see where I want my straps to be, and I'm gonna sew my straps down to the back. And then we're gonna decide how low we want this scoop to be. Obviously, it still has to be sewn down, but I might make it a little bit lower. But I'm gonna try it on and cut it first if it needs that. But for now, flip this inside out. And we're gonna sew down our back seam, making sure we go right up underneath where our zipper ends. So I have tried my dress on. I'm pretty happy with it. I like this center slit. I'm happy with the length. The back is looking great. I did try it on and see where I want my straps, so I've already marked those. I haven't sewn them yet because we do still have to hem this front part, including the straps. So these will all go in about 1/2 inch. But even with this going in 1/2 inch, I don't think I have this top swooped enough, which is what I was worried about. If you look at the original, it's really, really swooped. I'm also hoping my boning just on the sides is enough to hold all of this. It is very tight, so I'm hoping it doesn't collapse with all the beading. But I'm gonna swoop this down even more. It's gonna be very low cut. So I'm just gonna do that on my mannequin. And then once I've swooped that down, I'm gonna take this and we're gonna hem everything. And then that's pretty much it for the dress. We're gonna start beading. Parts of the dress, done. Much lower, definitely have a low neckline. This is all finished. I have my mic here, so that's what you're seeing. This is finished. The straps are sewn on. I'm happy with the back, happy with the front. I wish I almost made it a little tighter because I wanted it to like snatch me, but you know what? We're good for now. And I'm gonna start beading. I think we can make it to New Year's. I think we got this.
Finally, in the home stretch, you guys can see I'm using a big bead and then I have these appliques. I do have a video, a short that I made where I showed you guys where I got these appliques and how much they cost. I will tag that in the description. This is the one thing I will say though, if I was going to redo this over and do this more professionally, besides the fact that I would take more time and do my pattern pieces on pattern paper, one of the things I would do is I would get better beads that matched the original better. Mine ended up being a little whiter, and I actually think I almost did too much beading. So if I was gonna do something different, I would perfect the beading and get some different sizes. And finally, guys, here are the results. I absolutely love how this dress turned out. It was exactly what I wanted for New Year's Eve. I'm glad I was able to finish it in a day, even if it was a time crunch and very stressful. But let me know what you think, and let me know if you try and recreate this for yourself, because it is a great classic vintage Mugler to recreate. Also, make sure and like and subscribe. I am going to be coming out with some new patterns. I have a really beautiful one coming up in January for you guys to make, and those will also come with full video tutorials. Thanks, guys.